Name's David Armstrong. I'm representing my company Terrabos Consulting.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Justice Pepper and the panel for allowing me to speak in front of you today. I'd first like to give you a brief rundown on my background, which is mentioned in my submission. I have over 25 years' experience in the pastoral industry across Northern Australia, 15 of these in the Northern Territory. In the NT, I've run my own cattle breeding and trading business, initially based in the Sturt Plateau region. And I've been a contract fencer, yard builder, established cattle feedlots and done mustering plus general station work. I established Terrabos Consulting in 2011 and focus on the Northern Territory pastoral, mining, exploration, industry and Aboriginal economic development. Prior to Terrabos, I worked for 5 years at the Northern Land Council in rangeland management. This was focused on sustainable pastoral development on Aboriginal land, which included long-term lease negotiations under the Land Rights Act. Through this, I developed a high level of trust with Aboriginal people that I don't take lightly. In 2012 to 2015, I was involved in the oil and gas industry negotiating and managing access agreements and liaising with pastoralists regarding exploration activities with over 50 stations north of Tennant Creek and south of Katherine, plus negotiating native title access. Activities include seismic operation, drilling, geological surveys, airborne geophysical surveys and infrastructure development survey work. Being a Territorian and with the experience I have in pastoral, in the oil and gas industry and working with Aboriginal people, I find myself sitting between those three groups. And this has given me an extensive experience and insight into issues in the relationship, which I see is unparalleled with pretty much anyone up here. But for today, being a short presentation, I'd like to focus on the issue of a social licence, what that is. The majority of work I've done has been for Pangai Resources in the Sturt Plateau region, who engaged me at the end of 2012 to assist them with pastoral access negotiations. Since then, I negotiated and managed approximately 25 signed land access agreements covering 27 stations for Pangai to undertake on-ground operations such as seismic and drilling. Through this time, Pangai built their social licence to operate by negotiating openly and fairly with pastoralists who banded together and in their sense negotiated in good faith for mutually beneficial outcomes. Firstly, Pangai had to build trust by doing what they said they were going to do. With that, I believe, came respect and the ability to sit at the pastoralist table on a yearly basis to openly renegotiate access agreements as they were done on a yearly basis. Respect is the key. You open the front gate to a station and the house might be 20 kilometres down the track, but as soon as you enter that gate, you're in someone's home. Yep. And that respect they deserve, and that respect Pangai showed. Hence, they have that social licence to operate. The agreements and how they work, you've got a two-pronged negotiation. You have native title and you have the pastoral land access negotiations. Through that, with the native title, you have to develop a work program to deliver to the NLC to go to traditional owners, stipulating what you're going to do and how you're going to do that. With Pangai, we develop those work programs based around the pastoral access agreement too. So when we went to the pastoralists and the traditional owners, it's the one program. Delivering that program to the pastoralists allows them to see exactly what's going to happen. And changing that program under the Native Title Act through the Land Council is difficult. It can be done, but it needs to be done through a bit of work and further negotiation. And I can vouch that I have tried to do other work outside of that program at the end of 1 year, and the Land Council said no, so we didn't do it. So once you stick to that, once you have that program in place, you stick to that program. Once the access agreements are signed, and we're in the field, I sit down with the pastoralist and we negotiate an operational agreement, which is basically just myself and the pastoralist sitting down and working out the do's and don'ts on the station, how to shut gates, whether we leave gates pinned back, wide open, you know, tracks we can use, can't use, how to speeds, where they're mustering, whether they're going to be shooting dogs or dingoes. And that's all listed and written out and signed between myself and the pastoralist. At the end of all operations, I visit the pastoralist again and we go through those operational agreements and discuss how the conduct, how things were. But the final question that I always ask is, are you happy with how Pangaea operated and can they come back on your station? And the answer has always been yes. So again, they built their social licence to operate. Looking at social licence outside of the Sturt Plateau area and that Pangaea area, how do you build that social licence outside of that area and the people you are directly dealing with? I know there are issues within the community and there are concerns in the community, and I respect that people have those concerns. But I'd also like people to respect that I have a view as well. But a lot of my concerns, and having worked extensively with Aboriginal people, my concerns is the information delivered to those particular traditional owners in the areas where I've been working. I've had TOs south of Katherine tell me directly that they will get sick, their kids will die, their water will get poisoned, and their fish will die, their cattle will die, and their land will be destroyed. In their eyes, that's just total Armageddon, total wipeout. Whether you like this industry or not, using fear as a tool, and that's what is in these people's eyes when you look at them, against the most disadvantaged Territorians is wrong and frankly disgraceful. I believe there are opportunities for TOs within the oil and gas industry. However, TOs need to be afforded the right to balanced information. The industry engagement is governed by Native Title Act and the Land Rights Act and controlled by the land councils. And through this inquiry, there may be more restrictions on the industry. Activists are controlled by nobody. They push their own agenda, their own extreme agenda, and I believe they need to be controlled and held accountable as this industry is. Another group has asked me to help them secure funding to further develop their pastoral operations, as a recent application had been knocked back. Funding is getting harder to obtain, and I believe financial independence is a large stepping stone to true self-determination. I asked what other business opportunities they had on their land, and they said a company wants to frack, but they've been told it's no good. I told them it may not be right for them, but they need to look into it and investigate it fully, as it may be a way of making money off their land where they can use in other businesses on their land. They asked me to go and speak to the exploration company for them. I explained there's a moratorium and told them they would need to go to the starting point, which is the Land Council, not me. Again, they had been told it was bad and they didn't know why. I've raised the above points as I work in Aboriginal economic development, and I see opportunities for them in the oil and gas industry, and I'd hate to see them railroaded and miss out. And this I've seen before, where people come in with their own agenda and manipulate Aboriginal people around to what they want to see, and I'm seeing it out there now. Activists will go back to their home, but the TOs, who could be the biggest losers, will be left where they are. If you look at Jiltmingan in the Mataranka region in the 2008 census, it was ranked the worst place to live in Australia for socio-economic reasons. Schooling, job opportunities, health, those sorts of things. You know, there's opportunities there that need to be investigated. Whether this industry is right for those people, they can decide that. It may not be. But if they are going to be told that their kids are going to die, their fish are going to die, their cattle are going to die, they are not going to allow this industry at all. So that's why I believe there needs to be control measures put in place in activists entering these places. Under the Land Rights Act, you need a permit to enter Aboriginal land, but that's pretty easily circumvented. With my experience in the industry and what I submitted in the in my submission, I'll probably leave it at that and see if there's any questions, really.
You'd accept, wouldn't you, Mr. Fraser, that, sorry, not Mr. Fraser, Mr. Armstrong, that a social licence obviously is more than just good land access agreements. It also encompasses a wide range of environmental concerns as well. Yeah,
I totally agree. But I sort of look at the pastoralists where we're operating are happy for it. And they would not, and I've been told directly by them, they've looked me in the eye and said, this will not happen on my station if I didn't want it to happen. But they're happy for it to happen. They wouldn't allow drilling and the contamination of their water, which is the lifeblood of their station, if they didn't think it was going to be safe.
Anyone? Yes, Dr. Ritchie.
Mr. Armstrong, you were just saying, and you've obviously got a long history of working, you know, there's a lot of industries out bush, and that you've developed a relationship of trust with Aboriginal people that you've worked with. Just how do you find, when you're talking to them about this, and just, I mean, I know that you've been very clear to them that you're not the go-to person and the Lands Council is their representative, but just talking through their concerns and just talking to them about what you know of the process, how do you find that goes when you're going, you know, when you're just discussing the process with them, and when they get to hear it from a trusted source, what's their reaction?
People I'm talking to, and you do find, and I'll sort of be relating to the Beetaloo Basin, there are traditional owners that stretch from the northern to the southern. You know, they'll be linked through for different family reasons. So they'll have been to more extensive meetings, say, in the south than they have in the north, and they will have a better understanding of it. And when you get in with a group, just on the side and quietly have a chat, you know, there is confusion out there, but a lot of the people that I've dealt with that have worked on cattle stations, for instance, and understand drilling aren't concerned with it. Particularly in native title areas, I've had people say to me, you know, we're happy for it on native title for sure, because they actually don't get to utilise native title land, but they have some means to gain benefit from it. Hence, I believe pastoralists should too. But I've also had traditional owners say to me, where they've allowed it on native title, they want it to happen on the native title, they'll see how it goes, and then they'll see whether they let it happen on their land trust land. So that, you know, they're out there looking, they want to get educated. And particularly the traditional owners that have been engaged with the industry for a number of years and have had time to build up a level of knowledge about it. You know, the concerns are not there.
I just ask, is there anything, again, you know, you say, well, there's this generalised disaster will happen kind of idea, but once you get past that, is there anything specific that they say, gee, we don't like the idea of the you know, the horizontal drilling, or we don't like them setting the shape charges, or whatever? Is there any particular thing that they that, you know, you could say that is most likely to bring out that reaction of, Jesus, we don't like this, as distinct from with bores? You know, we've been drilling water bores for 100 years. I mean, yeah,
it's more the surface operations.
Okay.
And I find that with pastoralists too. And I'm talking about traditional owners in the areas that I've been dealing with.
Yeah, no, I only want to, your direct
experience. Yeah, so it's more what's going to happen on the surface and how's that going to affect, you know, how they get around on the land and things like that. But you know, there are benefits from roads being put in. You know, a lot of traditional owners, I've done seismic work where the seismic lines have been cleared and they have to be rehabilitated. They don't want that. Pastoralists don't want that. Pastoralists can use them for fire breaks, they can use them for lick runs. Traditional owners want them done so they can actually use them as access into country. The other thing is, as far as with the sacred site clearances on native title land, with this industry, it's enabled traditional owners to get out on country where they haven't been for a long time. So part of the sacred site clearance is taking along young kids and taking them out, and they're learning about country where they don't go because it's station country. So they see benefits in a number of different things. But there are concerns there.
Okay,
I
thank you.
don't deny that.
Yes, Professor Hart.
We were in Queensland last week talking to a range of landholders, and one of the things that we were exploring there was how much did they discuss their negotiations with the companies, and it varied. What's your experience there of whether the pastoralists share information? I did okay out of this. This is how I went about it. Do they talk to each other?
Well, with the Stirred Plateau, they negotiated as a group.
As a group.
Which gave them power. But then there was individual negotiations as well. So there was a sort of overall negotiations, and then we sat down individually. And what was negotiated was, we need access tracks and how they were going to be developed, access to water, so what bores we could use and how we were going to upgrade those bores, those sorts of things. So what pastoralists got was, look, I would say there may have been talk over the fence, but it probably kept to themselves quite a bit.
Probably about money.
Yeah, potentially over the fence about money.
Yep.
But, you're talking about pastoralists that can be 60 k's apart.
Exactly.
Neighbours, they're neighbours, but they're along. They talk for sure. So how much they talked over the fence, I'm not sure. I believe that access agreements should be confidential and not public. I believe they can, moving forward, they could be business deals between the industry and the individual pastoralists. And I just think that within a business deal, it should be kept confidential. Environmental management plans and those sorts of things that the public should see, not a problem. But the actual nuts and bolts of an access agreement, I think it's...
Presumably only if both parties want that confidentiality. We've heard time and time again landholders who object to confidentiality being imposed on them.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. Yeah.
Obviously, if both parties agree, well...
Yeah. Well, and I with the people that I've dealt with, because I think there's a good relationship, they'd probably prefer to have them confidential.
Sorry. Yes.
Can I just explore a little further your assertion of misinformation to Indigenous groups, and you made some broad comments about more control over anti-fracking groups.
Yep.
Tease that out, will you? Because I have no idea of what we might recommend there. I mean, it's a democratic society. It's rather difficult in terms of control.
Yeah.
What did you have in mind?
Well, I'd be looking at, the bulk of communities are on land trust land, and controlling the access to those land trust lands. And under the Land Rights Act, you need a permit to go onto Aboriginal land. However, that's pretty easily circumvented by having a traditional owner say, no, they're here with me. To do that, the Land Council needs to be the central focus. So the industry is controlled in their access by the Land Council, and that's with consultation and so forth. It has to be done through the Land Council, and so there's control measures there for the industry.
For the industry.
Yeah. Controlling the activists is another thing. How do you stop them going on there? So I think you need someone like the Land Council, and I believe it sort of has to be the Land Council as the representative body for traditional owners, who deliver a information package that's developed and tailored for Aboriginal people, so that they have a good understanding. And those meetings need to be conducted, a number of meetings, so you can deliver some information, go away, let them digest that and come back. And not have either group going in there saying this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to, do it. But I still see the industry are controlled by that. Anything you do that I've done within the oil and gas industry with Aboriginal people is through the Land Council. You don't rock into a community and start spruiking. And so, the Land Council needs to be resourced to do that. I know a lot of people say that the Land Councils make a lot of money off mining and whatnot. Well, having worked in there, it's pretty tough. And in that organisation, you are damned if you do and you're damned if you don't in a lot of aspects. So they need the resources to do it.
Yep, thanks. That's good.
Yes, Dr. Beck.
You mentioned before that you saw opportunities for Aboriginal communities. I'm just wondering if you could articulate that, expand it out a bit as to what you see as the opportunities and how they may be realised in reality.
Well, there's employment opportunities. If I look at employment opportunities to start with, I mean, I've been involved in a number of pastoral training programs, and the kids come along and it's outside hard physical work, and a lot of the kids get to the end and they don't want to do it. So if there's an opportunity to drive a machine, and I've seen this happen where we ran a pastoral training workshop. We had the senior elder there who's an ex-pastoralist. He had his grandson there. They were on the front page of the Australian newspaper. He was as proud as punch that his grandson was going to be a stockman. 2 days later he left and went and worked in a mine because he didn't want to work on a station. So if you're looking again out in that, say, Beetaloo area at employment opportunities, there's station work and there is some mining work. This is another industry that can pick up kids and bring them in through civil construction. And I was involved in the Pangaea training program. And having been involved in a lot of pastoral training programs, this was one of the best I've seen. No holes barred. And they went, the Pangaea executives, just this is what we've got to do and this is how we've got to deliver it. And so the employment opportunities in civil, driving machinery, and then moving further forward into the oil and gas industry. And I do see a sense from these major companies that they need to deliver on that front.
Can you just briefly outline the training program that Pangaea undertook and did it lead to a formal qualification or not?
Yeah, look, the Pangaea training program led to a certificate 2 or 1 in resource management, I think. And what they did, it was based at Flying Fox Station. MS Contracting ran it, right. Which you may have heard about this program.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, so I'll probably be brief then.
That's fine.
Yeah, but on the back of that, speaking to traditional owners, senior mentors who were there, and that was a key to the success of this, was employing mentors. So they brought older traditional owners. So speaking to one of those senior people last year, the object was that these kids would apply for jobs and come back and work in 2016, and obviously the moratorium kicked in and the work stopped. But speaking to one of the senior mentors last year, 2 of those kids got jobs elsewhere. So that's a success. A big success. And they got it on the back of that. He said straight out, they got this work on the back of that training program.
Right.
So the way it was structured worked. There was a lot of work that went into it. And again, it targeted traditional owners of that Pangaea area, not Aboriginal people from wherever. It was traditional owners, which again is a big thing.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Dr. Anderson, last question.
Yeah, thanks for all that. I just wanted to follow up the employment opportunities and whether there's scope for employment that goes beyond the industry itself, but employment that might be more directly relevant to Aboriginal communities, and that is using the wealth that's created by the industry to establish things like land management ranger programs, maybe market gardens, art and crafts and sporting, or, you know, other enterprises that aren't directly related to the industry? What sort of scope?
Yeah, look, that's... I see a lot of scope in that, and I see a lot of opportunity in that. And I see that from gaining the funds to do themselves off their land to then go and invest in whatever they want to. So, as you've mentioned, ranger groups in land management, and that can then be worked in with the mining operations or the oil and gas industry for weed management and such things, but also on their wider land trust areas or native title areas for sacred site protection and further weed control that they do. Tourism industries, cattle industries in particular, on their cattle stations for infrastructure development, taking that funds elsewhere. It's harder and harder to get funding for pastoral development. And if I believe if Aboriginal people can generate their own income off areas of their land trust and put that money elsewhere, the opportunities, you know, are there. And that's what these people were talking to me about out there. Where can we get some money? So they need to have the opportunity to see whether this industry is good and how it can happen. Another thing I suppose I can point out is the holistic, I believe, consultation that needs to happen with Aboriginal people about economic development on their land, including this industry. And that's where I've seen a land trust with nothing happening on it, and the traditional owners want cattle on it because that's what they identify with. And it also has an exploration application over it. At that stage, I was working for a major pastoral company on that cattle potential of this land, and I knew that another major oil and gas company was interested in it. So at that, I wanted to try and bring the two together and do one consultation. Both of them develop a plan on how they can both utilise oil and gas and cattle on this land. Because if you go out 1 month and you consult on cattle, and then you go out the next month and consult on oil and gas, it's too much confusion. They don't know what they should do. Bring it together and show that it can work together, and they can make a choice if they want both or if they don't want both. Because the reality is there is potential income out of this industry, and the income isn't there so much out of the cattle industry. There's the employment and sort of jobs, but the long and the short of it, you don't make a huge profit from your cattle.
Thank you very much, Mr. Armstrong. That was a very useful presentation, raising many good points. Very appreciative of your time to the panel.